The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 2 is the direct follow-up to Trails of Cold Steel, taking place directly after the events of the first game. It is also the 7th game in a long-running series from Neo-Falcom, The Legend of Heroes Trails, which encompasses, so far, 3 arcs that tell an overarching story. And while you can play each arc separately, and I feel like that each, or at least the two Cold Steel games had a satisfactory arc at the end, what they're building is a narrative that is the video game equivalent to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A very bold thing to do in this day and age with RPGs that expand over 60 to 100 hours of gameplay. That is impressive. Now, while I do think you can play the Trails games without playing the other games, there are references that pop up from different games, such as groups that previously appeared in the Trails in the Sky game, or the Crossbell arc oftentimes gets referenced in the Trails of Cold Steel game. And I'm looking at this as someone who has only played Trails of Cold Steel and Trails of Cold Steel 2, so this is how I am reviewing the game. And all I can say is that these 2 games alone have made me want to go back and play the other games that I've missed to catch up on that story and understand the bigger events. That being said, this is an extremely difficult game to review for that matter, especially because I am going to have to talk about some spoilers from the first game in order to adequately give this a great review. So if you don't want the story spoiled, I will be containing a little bit of a spoiler section for those who want to go into the first game completely blind. There will be no spoilers for number 2, so you don't have to worry about that. But it's impossible for me to even talk about a key gameplay feature within Trails of Cold Steel 2 without spoiling at least some events or the ending of Trails of Cold Steel. So you have been warned. Save it to your play later list and watch it at a later date if you are still trying to finish up the first game. With that disclaimer out of the way, guys, it's time we get into our review. The story of Trails of Cold Steel 2 picks up directly where the first game leaves off. Reen wakes up near his homeland of Ymir after Thor's military academy is invaded. We learn at his awakening 2 months have passed since those events. After the death of Chancellor Osborne, the noble faction has moved in to overthrow the reformists and take over Heimdall. This puts the continent of Erebonia into civil war. After Reen's sister Elise and Princess Alphen are kidnapped and taken into custody by the noble faction, by none other than Vita Clotilde, Reen decides to set out and rescue them and reunite Class 7. He is joined by Toval, a bracer and friend of Reen's from the first game. As they travel together to find Class 7 and unite them back together, Reen quickly learns of the chaos that has ensued across the continent since the events of the first game. The game's plot instantly picks up and leaves you wanting to continue to play. Unlike the first game, it instantly sucks you back in and doesn't slow down the pace of the story. While that is no hit towards the first game, as it was constructed in a way to set up events to the second game and grow the characters, I bring this up because many have stated the first game is a bit of a slog to get into. The nice thing about the game is it does come with a section in the startup menu that allows you to catch up on events and much more, so it's not throwing you in blind if you do decide to pick this one up and try your luck again at a Trails of Cold Steel game. The game sees the return of Class 7 as a whole, which is where I will say playing Trails of Cold Steel 1 first has its benefits, as you have an entire game before this spending time with the characters and growing with them throughout the game. So if you're jumping into this as your first, you might feel a bit disconnected or confused as to what's going on. Each member of Class 7 has different struggles and responsibilities thrust upon them that they have to deal with since the events of the last game. I don't want to go too much into detail as I want to keep this spoiler free, but I will say Eustace as a whole really hit me hard and I felt bad for what he had to deal with and come to terms with. It is through these moments that characters grow even further and leave more of an impact on you as the player. Toval, Claire, Sarah, and Sharon also take a bigger role in this game, and help Class 7 out in many ways. Though the game focuses much more on story this time around, it doesn't forget about its characters. The first games focus heavily on each member of Class 7, having to set aside their differences and work together towards a common goal, bonding with each other and developing close relationships. The second game, however, focuses much more on the individual problems of each character. Each character faces their own issues that help them develop their character and grow. None of them feel forced or tacked on, which is a testament to how great the writing in this game truly is. Some characters' problems are far more serious. Without spoiling too much, I think Machias and Eustace have the biggest hurdles to overcome. Since Machias' father is the governor of Heimdall and the capital is heavily guarded, Machias always has to carry the fact that his father may be dead. Eustace, on the other hand, well, he really has to decide his place in the world, and while he isn't my favorite Class 7 member, he is by far the character that I feel's developed most through both of the games. It is through these relationships and moments that all characters truly bond. The story is full of heartfelt moments that hit you right in the gut, making the impact of the story and travesties across Erebonia all the more tear-jerking. Fee was another character that took me by surprise. I wasn't ever a fan of her much during most of the first game, but she slowly started to grow on me. But by the end of this game, she has become one of my favorite characters across both games. Trails of Cold Steel 2's battle system does not stray too far from what the original game set up. There are some additional added features that break up combat and make it a little bit more interesting this time around, but the core mechanics are still there. You're still going to be working on building up CP so you can use your S-crafts, keeping your party members linked up in battle so they can use assist attacks after unbalancing an enemy. You're still going to use your rush and burst attacks in order to have all party members attack all at once. The combat system still very much is the same. However, where things start to change is with something called overdrives. Overdrives are an ability that is exclusive between Reen and all other party members in the beginning, making it so towards the beginning of the game, you're going to have to keep Reen in your party at all times if you want to use it. There is, however, ways to unlock overdrives for all characters by opening certain chests and fighting monsters inside. Overdrives essentially give party members the ability to attack 3 times and always do a follow-up with a link attack. So it works much like this. If you have Laura and Reen connected together, you execute overdrive with Reen. Reen gets a chance to attack, Laura will do an assist. Laura gets an attack in, Reen will do an assist, and then Reen gets another chance and Laura gets another assist. All while doing this, if you have the option to use Rush or Burst, you can do so, allowing you to get even more damage in towards an enemy if need be. This is a great way to build up CP if you're in a pinch in a boss fight and are needing to get some of those extra S-crafts in to finish out a boss. The second biggest change to the gameplay was something that was actually introduced in Trails of Cold Steel 1, but I chose to skip over it entirely because of spoilers, and it popped up at the end as a boss fight, so it seemed a bit redundant. However, it takes a much bigger role in this game as it plays a crucial role into the gameplay. During the events of the first game, Reen awakens the Ashen Knight Valimar, in which I can only explain as a mecha or Gundam-like machine used in combat. The combat plays like rock, paper, scissors. Depending on the enemy's stance, you want to plan your attacks to hit a certain weak point. This allows you to do a follow-up attack to that enemy, though a critical hit is not always guaranteed. Hitting the weak point will ensure success and maximum damage. This is broken up into 3 categories: head, body, and arms, hence the rock, paper, scissors comparison. Hitting the wrong one will not only cause you to lose your chance for a possible critical hit, you will also do significantly less damage. During these fights, you're also able to heal, which you will be doing a lot of, so EP becomes essential. EP can be restored using the charge ability. You're also able to gain CP, which allows you to use special abilities, which may allow you to evade enemies' oncoming attacks. This is helpful when you're in a bind or evading enemy strong attacks. You'll also have crafts that can deal heavy damage to your opponent. You're also able to link up with another party member while Reen is using Valimar. Not only does Reen get a turn, but the party member you're linked up with gets a turn as well. They can use an X art, which can cause damage to the enemy, or they also have one that buffs up the defensive Reen, which can also help you out in a pinch. They also have the ability to use Charge and Spirit. Charge will increase your EP, while Spirit will restore your CP and your HP. Knowing when to heal and when to use abilities and rushing is something you're not going to want to do. It's kind of a game where patience is going to be key, and you're going to want to wait for those opportunities to jump in and attack. Orbments this time around got a little bit of a revamp from the first game. Not only do you equip quartz to use as for defensive and offensive magic, but this time around you're able to level up your slots, making it so this being the way that you are able to use stronger magic throughout the game. In the quartz menu, you'll see two little lines. They at first appear as empty, but once you level up that particular slot, you'll start to see a yellow bar that will appear. This indicates that has been leveled up to the next level. And where this comes into play, when you equip a quartz, you'll see that certain quartz require one of those bars to be filled up. And that's how you equip stronger magic. It was a nice change and something that I really did enjoy. Other things that the game changes is the addition of the Orbital Bike from the first game. This can be summoned from the menus and used at any time on the field, much like horses could in the first game when you were in the Nordlands. You can also use horses at any point in the field, given that you recruit the right class member that gives you the ability to do that. And even though the bikes could be used in the Nordlands, I still took the chance to use horses in there because it just felt more natural, since that's the way it was in the first game. Some things I forgot to mention in my review of Trails of Cold Steel were the turn orders and turn bonuses that follow, and the inclusion of higher elements. Let's first talk about the turn order bonuses that pop up at random. Off to the side of the turn order screen on occasion, you will see various different symbols pop up. Hearts indicating a bonus to either HP, EP, or CP. Next to their heart will have a number which represents the amount gifted if the player or enemy plays on that turn. If an enemy has that benefit, you can steal it from them by delaying their turn and giving it to one of your characters, which can turn the tides of battle. So using an orbment called Impede or finding a craft that has a chance to delay an enemy attack can be very beneficial. Another added bonus that can occur at random is 0 Rs. This negates the cost of EP to cast an art and requires no cast time either. Couple this with Emma's beefed out Master Quartz, which increases maximum damage output of offensive arts. You can devastate enemies with ease. Arts in general take a much bigger role in this game this time around. They're a lot more powerful, and you're going to need to use them quite a bit more to turn the tides in battle. Now let's talk about the higher elements. Higher elements appear in certain areas across Erebonia and only pop up at certain intervals in the game, usually in some ancient ruins or underground areas. Higher elements can very much affect the tides of battle if your characters are not properly prepared. The two higher elements that have the most crucial impact are Death Blow and Vanish. Death Blow has the chance to instantly kill a target in one fell swoop. While this is beneficial if the player has the chance to execute it, it can be devastating to a party member if the enemy has the opportunity to do the same, shifting the tides of battle from your favor to theirs. The other big component is Vanish. Vanish temporarily makes a party member disappear from battle, only time brings them back, and no support party member can come in and take their place, meaning they're just gone until you're done with the battle or they come back. Status attacks can also be placed at random with the status effect icon on a target or party member unless they are immune to the said status effect that it chooses at random. CP up 100 increases your CP by 100, CP drops to 0, drops it to 0. So if you realize that you're going to come up with a 0 and you're not going to be able to put that towards an enemy, go ahead and use that character S-Craft and just finish out the battle. It's much better than losing the entire thing. Another addition to the gameplay that is worth mentioning is bonding events. They have been improved drastically from the first game. While I thought they were a nice little nods here and there, being able to spend time with your party members in the first game, they felt a bit bland and felt like they were just there to pad out the game. Trails of Cold Steel 2 makes them much more impactful and uses them to advance character development, making me want to do as many as I can to learn more about each character. It really feels this time around you're talking and spending time with a character rather than just messages popping up. You studied with Emma, or Reen spent time going to the shop with Laura. You spent quality time with the girl of your choice or strengthen your bonds with one of the guys. Falcom seems to have put a lot more effort into these this time around, and the game is much better for it. During the course of the story, you will be given specific side quests to find Thor's military students across Erebonia. Some are required, others aren't. By taking time to recruit them, it benefits the party. Each student who comes back to the ship has an added perk or shop that they will assist you with. One such student will allow you to equip Orbments to Valimar. Since you're able to buy weapons and items from students as well, it's beneficial to recruit them. There's also some, as I said, allow you to be able to use horses out on the field, and others just have varying degrees that they can also help you with as well. Blade also makes a comeback, and it works pretty much the way it did in the first game. When it comes to Falcom and music, I have an expectation that the music is just going to be great. Much like Final Fantasy and Square Enix, I immediately expect a certain amount of quality to come from their music. Back with Final Fantasy, I instantly knew that the game's music was going to suck me in, and like I said, I've come to expect the same quality from Falcom's music, and Trails of Cold Steel 2 is no different. There are many tracks reused from the first game, and I liked that. I resonated certain songs with those towns and villages, so to hear them again was a nice touch. While the battle theme, Heated Mind, is certainly weaker than the first game's A Glint of Cold Steel, I still really enjoyed it. I found A Glint of Cold Steel to be a much more motivating battle theme, but over time Heated Mind really started to grow on me. I was excited to hear A Tie to Arcus again, as it was one of my favorites from the first game. I really enjoyed Ymir Canyon's music too. It was so peaceful and beautiful, I actually sat still for 10 minutes just listening to this beautiful melody. I was also really happy to hear A Land of Blue Skies make a return, as it was one of my favorite melodies from the first game. The game's music, much like the first game, really helps bring this game's characters and world to life. There were moments within the game where the tracks were reused from the first game and immediately set the mood and scene that was playing. At a certain point in the game, a tragedy occurs, and the piano melody that plays in the background just adds to the mood of the game. It really sets in what was a minor part in the first game, and adds so much more depth to that little scene, making it a lot more heart-wrenching, I think, than it would have been had that musical track not been used. There were certain tracks in the game that were used in a couple of places that pulled me out of the game's immersion, namely because the first time I heard that song was at the beginning of the game, and I immediately associated it with a particular area. So to hear it reused in the game, especially towards the end, really took me out of the immersion. Still, this is a small gripe and what I can only call one of the best games released this generation. Trails of Cold Steel 2 is an ambitious game that builds upon what its predecessor set out to do, making a much better experience to play. Though it does take some of the pacing issues and fix those in Trails of Cold Steel 2, if you're looking to jump into this as your entry point in the franchise, be forewarned, you are going to miss out on a lot of character development and overall character arcs that are being developed in that first game if you just jump in blind. Though there is a backstory option which will give you a lot of the crucial plot details that have happened in the game, there's something about experiencing the way that these characters interact with each other that just make a much more satisfying experience. But I also look at it this way. If you're looking to get into the Trails of Cold Steel franchise, or just the Trails franchise in general, you're going to have to start somewhere. At some point, you're going to have to pick up a game and just play it. Because what Falcom is creating here is ambitious, and it's something no other video game studio has set out and achieved to do. More and more entries are planned in the franchise, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger, making it much more difficult for people to find the time to play all these games. But from what I've seen so far, sticking with it is going to be worth it. And I highly recommend anybody looking for a great RPG with some great characters and some great story. Trails of Cold Steel and Trails of Cold Steel 2 are two games you are not going to want to miss out on. I'm giving Trails of Cold Steel 2 my Gaming with Spoons seal of approval, and ranking this into legendary status. Legendary status is only reserved for the top tier games, the best of the best. And my gosh, Trails of Cold Steel 2 absolutely deserves that. Pick up this game and play it. If story matters to you, you are not going to be disappointed. That being said, I would love to be able to review eventually the Trails in the Sky games, as well as the Crossbell games and Trails of Cold Steel 3. But because I've stuck with these games for almost over 6 months now, I'm ready to move on to something else. I want to not hit franchise fatigue, so I will be returning with Trails of Cold Steel 3 at a later date and finishing out the other games that I have also missed on as well. That being said, our next game, RPG, we're going to be tackling on the channel is Digital Devil Saga. So if you want to see more reviews of Japanese games like this, be sure to hit subscribe, like the video, and share it with people and get the word out about this truly amazing series. Be sure to follow me on Twitch so you can see the streaming of Digital Devil Saga when we go live on Twitch. You guys have been watching Gaming with Spoons, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.